we are live, or we should be live. Let me know if you can hear me or see me all right. Yeah, but I think we should be live. So thanks for joining me today. What a ride has been so far. As you know, today streaming was not originally planned. You probably know that I normally stream live the first Tuesday of the month, and that will still be the schedule. So next Tuesday I will have another live stream. I'll talk about this later. But today I just wanted to go live to celebrate the 2,000 subscribers, and actually we are now at 2,043, 44, I guess. I didn't check before going live. And of course I wanted to thank you all of you for all of these. It's mind-blowing to me. When I started, I couldn't think of getting all of you guys following me and being interested in my videos. So I thought we do this live stream today to celebrate that, and to I will try and answer your questions that you may have about DevOps, about GitHub, and about Azure DevOps. And if you want to ask me anything else, I'm more than happy to try and answer that. I put on my expert T-shirt. I don't know if you can see it. So I should be good to go. Before we start with the questions, and I want to say that I do have some questions that I've marked down, because I asked on all the social media. I asked on Facebook. I asked on Twitter, on the dev community where I have my blog, on LinkedIn. And by the way, if you're not following me on those platforms, you can find the links in the video description, all the video descriptions. But yeah, I've asked, because I know there's a lot of people that cannot join me tonight because of time zone. My audience is pretty vary. We have people from Australia, people from Europe, people from US, West Coast, East Coast. So we have people from all over the world, and I collected some of the question offline, and I'll try to answer it today. But of course, I will try to answer first the questions in the live chat. So if you have any question, feel free to ask. Before we start with the questions, though, I have a few announcements that I wanna make. Ayaz said he can hear me. Thank you for confirming. Arvind said, huge congrats for the 2K followers. Thank you very much. And again, that's all thanks to all of you guys that are following me. So few announcements before we start. First of all, today I publish the new CoderDave website. So head to CoderDave.io and let me know what you think. In there, you can also subscribe to my newsletter. I'll have a newsletter going out soon. So go to CoderDave.io and check out the website. Let me know what you think, and subscribe to the newsletter. It's obviously completely free. And soon, I'm putting together some freebie, like a PDF probably or something about DevOps that I will be sending out to whoever subscribed to the newsletter. It's not ready yet, so if you subscribe tonight, you will not receive it straight away. Apologies for that. I couldn't make it in time, but I will be sending it to you soon. And as you probably know, if you want to support the channel even more, apart from watching the videos, you can have exclusive content on Patreon. There's videos and blogs and articles that I've been posting only on the Patreon platform. You can use the Buy Me a Coffee platform to buy me a coffee, or to donate the equivalent of a coffee. I've enabled the YouTube memberships, and so far what that enables you is to see all the videos as soon as I upload it. Usually I upload all the videos at least 1 week in advance, maybe more, depends on how I am with work, with the schedule. So you can do that, and you can see everything before everyone else. And finally, we also have the super chat that you can use for this live stream and all the other live streams if you want to contribute to the channel, if you want to support the channel, or if you want to grab my attention in the chat as well. All right, so I think we can start. Let me just start roll the intro video, and then we start with the questions. All right, guys. Again, thank you for being here. If you have any question about DevOps, Azure DevOps, or GitHub, feel free to post that in the in the chat. I'll try to go through all of those. And if you have other questions about me, about my DevOps career, DevOps journey, or anything else, just feel free to ask that as well. As I mentioned, I have some pre-grab questions that I'll be answering as well. And since there's no question in the chat at the moment, I think I'll start with one of those. I'll be posting them in the chat as well, so you all can see it. Let's start with this. So someone asked that they have a customer that would like to prevent other people in their organization to create their own Azure DevOps instances within their Azure DevOps tenant. So they wanted to know if there is a way to monitor or restrict this behavior. I've talked about that in one of the recent videos in which I was talking about securing the Azure DevOps instance. So if you haven't seen that, go and check it. But in short, first of all, this is possible only if you connect your Azure DevOps instance to an Azure AD, and this is actually what this viewer was asking. So he has this Azure DevOps connected to Azure AD. How to stop other people to create other organization of Azure DevOps connected to the same AAD or on that domain, and so on and so forth. So there is a way to do so. You need to go to the organization settings, and inside the organization settings, there's a page called Azure Active Directory. And in there, if you are connected to an Azure Active Directory, you have a toggle that you can enable that is something like restrict organization creation. I believe that's the label it has. And what that does is enables you to create new organizations on that Azure DevOps instance connected to that tenant. Only if you are an Azure DevOps administrator in Azure AD. And then in there, you can also create an allow list, meaning that you can add teams and users to that, and those users will be able to create organizations. But if not, only you or other people, other users set as Azure DevOps administrators in Azure AD would be able to create new Azure DevOps organizations. And this is super powerful. In the past, a lot of people, a lot of organizations had that problem. So this is the way to solve it. So yeah, that's organization setting, Azure Active Directory, and then there's a toggle for restrict organization creation. Madhu said, your tutorial very helpful to me. I'm very happy for that. I do all of this because I want to help everyone else getting better in DevOps, getting more knowledge in GitHub and Azure DevOps, etc. So let me also know, you guys, which tutorials or which content you prefer the most. If it's about just DevOps in general, if it's about GitHub, it's about Azure DevOps, what you watch the most, and I'll try to focus more on that. I just asked if he has a question about Azure App Service deploy task in Azure DevOps pipeline. Yeah, if you have any question, just let me know. Maru, I have to deploy my Kubernetes deployment files in dev, QA, prod, and environment. What is the best way to create a pipeline, CI/CD, separate pipelines, or in single pipeline? I believe you are talking about Azure DevOps. Am I correct? Or because you mentioned pipelines. So the way I would do it is probably having a single pipeline and have a multi-stage pipeline for the CI and the CD parts of the it's confirming that about Azure DevOps. Yeah, I would do one pipeline, one YAML pipeline, a multi-stage one, and I would have the CI and all the CD stages in there. The reason why I would do so is because I like having everything in a single view, and I like having the first of all the same CI for all of this. So you build only once, and then you deploy n times whenever you need to. You can control that with gates and approvals, so that's not a problem. And in each CD stage, I would grab the configurations for Kubernetes just from the environment variables or Key Vault and other stores like that. Apply that configuration, transform the files, and then deploy. That's what I would do, because it makes it even more clearer to proceed that way. The only moment in which I would not do that if it's becoming super complex. I mean, if each stage has 50 steps or anything like that, that will make the YAML file very, very long and complex. So in that case, I will still do one pipeline, but then I will split out the file in templates and use the templates to populate the end result. Arvin is asking how front-end devs can start diving into DevOps. That's a good question. I think so there's many components of DevOps, right? There's the technical component, the processes, the culture. For culture, the only way to do so, the only way to be into that is starting doing some training that may not be formal training, but doing your own research, reading books. There's a lot of books that are really interesting. I would suggest reading the books like the Phoenix Project, or what's called the other one, the Unicorn Project. That they are in a story way, but they explain exactly what DevOps is about from a cultural standpoint, not too much from a tool standpoint. And then if we talk about a tools standpoint, then what I would suggest is start looking more into CI/CD. Usually CI/CD is where everyone starts from, because it's the natural progression from development point of view. You want to be able to do CI of your project and then to deploy your projects, and then start doing that with CI/CD, and then walk your way backwards into continuous testing, into quality in general, into embedding security in there, and try to build like an onion, layer over layer over layer on those practices. And of course, if you're working in a team, try to, and you should, because DevOps is about teams, right? You should try and pull in your teammates in those practices and grow together with everyone. So I say, regarding the question about up service deploy task in Azure DevOps pipeline, it said I need first to deploy a clean sitecore to a staging slot and then deploy build artifacts to the same slot in the same pipeline. But when I deploy artifacts, it clean up the root folder. Is there a way not to delete files in the root folder when you deploy Azure App Service? I believe it is. It's been a while I haven't used the task for App Service, but if I remember correctly, there should be an option to deploy only the modified files. But to do so, you need not to deploy with a zip deploy. So if you're familiar with App Service deployments, you can deploy in different ways. One of those is, I think it's called zip deployment. And what it does is zip everything and deploys everything. So I believe that one, wipe whatever you find and change it. If you don't do that, and you enable the option, I can't remember exactly where it is, but it should be in the task. If you enable that option, you should be able to deploy only the modified files, which is more or less what the right click publish does in Visual Studio. It deploys only the modified files. You should be able to do that with the app service task as well. I've done it recently with GitHub Actions. It's been a while I haven't used that on Azure DevOps, but I'm sure it's there. So yeah, definitely there is a way. I just can't remember now where the flag is. All right. I hope that answer your question. But also say we want more demos on Azure DevOps and AKS deployment. I've done a video about AKS deployment using the deployment center, and that it's super fast. I have to say I've been covering more GitHub lately because there is a lot of things going on in there. There's a lot of new features, so I wanted to catch up with those things. I will get back to Azure DevOps fairly soon, and in fact, next Tuesday live stream will be, if everything goes as planned, should be how to use Dependabot in Azure DevOps. So if you're into that, don't miss it. But yeah, covering AKS and Kubernetes in general is something I will add to the different videos. I'll be doing videos on that on both Azure DevOps and GitHub Actions and how to deploy to Kubernetes. So be sure to stick around for that. But yeah, that's something I will cover. I will cover soon. Let's see. Any other question so far? Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So let me grab another question from the offline ones I pulled. This is a very interesting one, and it's, what are your thoughts on IAC security? And this is a question that someone asked in my blog platform, where when I posted, if you guys have seen, I posted recently video about IAC, infrastructure as code, and I posted the same content but in blog format on my blog. And I had this interesting question. So it says, traditionally in IAC, traditionally without IAC, the security teams are in charge of hardening the environments where the applications are deployed. How to do this in when you do IAC is something the developers should take care of, is something security teams should still take care of. So for me, it should be a 50-50, right? And I actually mentioned that in the IAC video I made. Traditionally, security was more a burden of the security team. And now we need to shift it left. So security should be part also of the responsibility of the development teams. But that doesn't mean first that the security team goes away. But it means that everyone should cooperate on that. And what that means is that also, as I mentioned in the video, we have tools, and I also posted recently a video about Sneak, which is a security scanning tool that has coverage for infrastructure as code, but there's only one of the tools that can do that. But again, there are many tools that can take care of scanning your IAC definitions and models before deploying them. So that's something developers should implement in their development flow, as they should do for the application bits. Same thing should apply to the infrastructure as code model. So that's the first thing. But secondly, still there are things that should be performed on the deployed environment. The challenge here is that if we talk about infrastructure as code for development purposes, for example, which means I will deploy my application in a development environment, and until I deploy, the development environment doesn't actually exist, and it's created only when the ISC definition is applied, then of course the security team cannot scan that environment because it doesn't exist. And then most likely, if it's like that, whenever I finish all my tests in the dev environment, that environment will be destroyed. So what I would suggest is, as part of your CI/CD pipeline, what I would do is after deployment, I would have another stage or another job that actually performs some security hardening and security scanning against that environment. So you can still start the developers and the testers and whoever else to access to that environment can start testing, can start debugging, can start do whatever they have to do. But also in the meantime, we have this security scanning going on. And if anything is detected, then that can be pulled back into the next iteration, meaning that, you know, if you have any finding from the security standpoint, then that's the time to to put hands on your ISC definition and fix that. Could be, you know, dependency, could be many different things, but at least you have something. So don't assume that if the environment is going to be destroyed just after the testing, no need to do anything, because that can lead to security malpractices or security issues. Even if that deployment environment or that environment will be live only for, you know, half an hour or so. Yeah, so with that out of the way, again, you guys, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If not, I will continue with the questions. There's another question, and this I had this on Twitter. And once again, if you're not following me on all the social platforms, you can find all the links down below. And this is interesting because I've always thought the definition is clear, but it may not be. So the question is, how is DevSecOps different from DevOps? And my answer can be controversial in the sense that for me, there should not be difference. The canonical difference is that in DevSecOps, you focus more on security. And the reason why I say that should not be difference is that DevOps should always be also about security. Because everything is part of DevOps. Should be continuous testing, continuous deployment, continuous delivery, continuous security, if that's a thing. Everything should be part of DevOps. So in my opinion, definition for or the existence of the DevSecOps definition or buzzword, if you will, should not be necessary, because whenever I do DevOps, I always include security. But I'm not sure actually who came up with this DevSecOps definition, but I guess it was because people tend to leave security outside of the DevOps realm, and so they wanted to give more emphasis on that. So DevSecOps is the practice of embedding security into DevOps, on shifting left on security, as I explained on the video I published recently. On automation for security and so on and so forth. So I guess if you look at the textbook definition, that should be the difference. So having more focus on security. But again, as I said, I would argue that in DevOps there must be security. And in my opinion, but feel free to contradict me if you want or if you feel like. In my opinion, this difference, DevOps versus DevSecOps, has also contributed more in creating more problems, because people, they think, well, I start now with DevOps and then I will go with DevSecOps, and that I think that make them think that it's okay not to focus on security now and just delegate it to someone else or doing in a later stage, which again, in my opinion, should not happen. I hope this is clear. Let me see. Yeah, I said he used to be responsible for security hardening in projects when he was participating in them as DevOps engineer. Yeah, exactly. And actually, now I don't want to to take anything away from you guys. If any of you is a DevOps engineer, don't take this personal. But I think that DevOps engineer role is very often misleading. And the reason why it's misleading is because many companies think that they can hire DevOps engineers. They create a DevOps team, and then they're doing DevOps. And while this is a first step, because maybe then the DevOps team can focus on CI/CD, can focus on doing those practices, I think is misleading, because DevOps is not about creating one team and having DevOps engineers there. DevOps is something that should be applied to the whole development, and not only development, to the whole IT, or at least software production group, if you will, because it's something that should span across multiple teams, and DevOps is all about collaboration in the end. So if you create a DevOps team, then it's just having another team, like devs, like ops, like security, like testers, and so on and so forth. And again, DevOps engineers are doing usually a terrific job to try and pull the strings all together from the different teams. But if I think when I talk to companies about that, I try to make them understand that that's not the correct way. It's the first step, but then should be many other steps. I don't know if you guys agree with me. Let's move to the next question, which was this one. I'm new to DevOps and I know a little bit of C++, HTML, CSS. Should I wait until I get some new skills, or I should start learning Git and GitHub right now? Well, you should start learning Git and GitHub right now, because chances are that whenever you get a job, or if you change job, or if you start being part of a team, you will have to use that. Even if you're not using GitHub, Git is nowadays the de facto standard for version control, and therefore you should start learning it. You should start practicing. You should start playing with that. Otherwise, whenever if you find a job or if you're part of a new team, that may be a disadvantage. Or it should be also, it may be a discrimination for you if you don't know it, to be able to find a new job or be part of a new team. That's about Git. When it comes to GitHub, then of course I'm biased. I would say you should start learning GitHub right now. I know that there are other platforms out there that have free repos or free offerings. But if you think that GitHub, to use a marketing expression, which is not too far from the truth though, is GitHub is the place where the world build open source. And as such, if you start learning, or if you start using GitHub to practicing Git, you can find a lot of examples. You can find a lot of people that already use it. And again, chances are that the companies you will work with, in some capacity, they probably already use GitHub. Not all companies use GitHub, but chances are that many companies do. And again, if you're new to DevOps, remember what I said before. DevOps is not just about source control. DevOps is not just about CI/CD. So learn that, because you will need it, but then start looking into testing, start looking into security, and start looking into processes and culture as a whole for DevOps. Let's see, what else do we have here? Arvin, which backend language will you prefer for DevOps devs to know? That's a good question. That's an interesting question. I think so. As you've probably seen from my demos, I like .NET, and I think I published a video about .NET 5 saying that .NET 5 is perfect for DevOps, and I still stand by that. But I also know that there are many other languages out there. The suggestion would be try to look at the market you're in. Maybe if you're in India, there's one or two major languages. If you are in US, there's another. If you are in Germany, that may be different. So try to look at your current market. Try and see what the most used one or two languages are, and try and focus on that. Because for DevOps per se, you don't necessarily need a backend language. You will need it if you when you have to make to look at the applications your companies are making. So whether you use C# or whether you use Java or whatever else, Node.js for backend, I think as long as you know one, it's fairly easy to jump back and forth. I don't think you will need to know all the primitives of every language. But I will pivot the question saying that you may want to know, or you may want to learn also some automation language, whether it's some scripting language, whether it's Python, whether it's even PowerShell or Bash. You will need to know at least one scripting language or automation language, because as DevOps people, we do a lot of automation, and you will need that for sure. Any other questions, guys? If not, I will continue with the list of questions I have. I have other 4 or 5 questions from the offline audience. Sorry, it's pretty hot here. As you know, I'm in Hong Kong, and last week has been really, really, really hot, and this week is very hot as well. We talk about like 28, 27 degrees Celsius at night, and I had to switch off the aircon in this room because it's quite loud, and I don't want to disturb the live stream. So it's getting quite hot in here. You'll see me sweating in a moment, probably. All right, let's move on with another question, and it's this one. How does GitHub solve the issue of dev test staging production environment being different, or it does not take care of it? So GitHub per se doesn't do that. You should do that probably with infrastructure as code. One of the benefits of infrastructure as code is avoiding or try to minimize as much as possible the environment drift problem, which means that different configuration and different structure of different environments. So the GitHub per se doesn't have configuration manager for environments, but you can use something like Ansible, you can use something like Terraform, you can use like ARM templates, PowerShell DSC and equivalents to control your environments. So you can use IAC and these configuration mechanisms and deploy that with GitHub Actions, since the question was about GitHub, and use the environments in GitHub Actions to publish that in the different environments. But again, that's something that will be taken care of by the IAC definition. And talking about GitHub Actions, I had another question that to basically compare GitHub Actions and Azure pipelines. So the question is if they are similar in the way you set them up and working with them. And I would say to a certain degree they are. in the sense that there are, both use YAML, but I guess that's the only similarity. And GitHub Actions initially was developed using the same technologies and the same engine of Azure pipelines, but of course they went to different ways. But I would say the structure is fairly similar, even though the syntax is not. But for other things, they are exactly the same. So both have the hosted agents, which in GitHub Actions are called hosted runners, which allow you to run your CI/CD on managed infrastructure. They both have the self-hosted agents or runners that you can install in your cloud or on-prem to do CI/CD deployment. So that is very, very similar. And in fact, if you look at the logs of the GitHub Actions runners, there is something that tries to connect to something in Azure DevOps or like with a visualstudio.com domain or something like that. I don't remember exactly, which I find interesting. But apart from that, they are fairly different, and the concept is also different. I talked about this in one of the live streaming I had about actions, but if you look at pipelines, you know that you have the tasks, and the tasks are really user-friendly. Even if you don't use the UI, if you use the YAML, but then you just pass in some parameters and then everything is taken care by the task. In GitHub Actions, for the most frequent and most common operations, especially the simplest one, like .NET Core build or something that you can do with Azure CLI with just a few lines. Those things are usually not converted into actions. The strategy there, or the thinking there, is if it's simple and you can achieve it with just one line of CLI of some sort, just do it. Don't use an action. So that's fairly different between the two platforms. Also, if you have used both GitHub Actions and Azure Pipelines, let me know which one you prefer. If you happen to have used both. Let's see this one. Thomas is asking, have you ever had a use case where you need to maintain centrally managed workflows and other repositories would call them via dispatch? I haven't directly, but I mean in a real environment, but I've done it as some sort of test. And it's possible, it's doable. You need to have use personal access tokens to do so, which I'm not a fan of, because you need to have access to the other repo's API. But yeah, it's possible. So would I recommend that? Probably not. I can't think of a reason why I would do so, because if it's for, if you want to have a team defining actions for you, then what I would do is, or defining, workflows for you, then I would either use the code owners to restrict the access to the modification to only those people, to the team. Or if we talk about like things more like templates or workflows that need to be applied to multiple repositories, then what I would do is probably create either a composite run step action and then use that in the different workflows in the different repos. Or I would probably, let me think, I would probably create some sort of custom action, especially if we talk about organizations, and use that one instead. I hope this answers your question. Aldo say hello. Hello to you. Thanks for joining us. Let me see if there's anything else. No, so I want to stick with, I think it's the last question about GitHub Actions that I have. I can't remember where or who posted this question and where. I believe it was on LinkedIn. And basically the question is, can I use GitHub Actions to integrate with other cloud providers? Of course you can. GitHub Actions support basically every cloud provider. We have in the marketplace the actions for all the major ones. So we talk about AWS, we talk about Azure, we talk about GCP, we talk about, I think, DigitalOcean, we talk about Ali Cloud. I hope I haven't forgotten anything. So for sure we have those ones. But if you have, and so for those one, we have the actions, and I'm sure we have. I don't know if we have any other action pre-built from other cloud providers. I had never used anyone outside of those. But even if we don't have, if they have a CLI that you can use or anything like that, you can install it on the runners and you can connect to anything. So basically anything that is reachable using an API or using a web call or of some sort, you can do it with a GitHub action. So that's not a problem. Anything else? Anything from the audience? I would love to have more questions for you, from you. Again, about anything about DevOps, GitHub, Azure DevOps, or if you want to know anything about me, feel free to drop it. I guess thank you very much. Thank you for joining. Let me see this other question over here. And we have a question from GitHub has this feature on a roadmap. Thank you, Dave. You were right. We want to have some sort of reusable templates. Yeah. The templates per se, the feature for templates is still on the roadmap. Not sure when it's coming, but yeah, you can, as I mentioned, you can create your custom actions. You can create the I just said it. I forgot the name. The composite step run actions, and something like that. So that's the way I would do it. Aldo, what about GitHub Enterprise on-premise with no ingress internet communication plus Azure DevOps services? I have this scenario right now. I guess it depends on your scenario. So what you're trying to achieve, what kind of integration you want to achieve between those services, because there are few things that works in pool. So you can have GitHub Enterprise pooling from Azure DevOps, so you don't necessarily need an ingress connection. But there are others that do require an ingress connection. So the question is triggering builds from code changes. Yeah, I guess you need to have ingress. Yeah, you could set up that's really dirty. You can set up a polling from GitHub Enterprise Server and see if there's been any change, but I wouldn't necessarily do that. But if you don't have any other choice, that would need to be. But rather than blocking the ingress, what I would do is trying to restrict the traffic only from Azure DevOps. The best you could do is if you have a firewall that accepts host names, then it's easy. If not, you need to download the IP ranges, and that's not very fun. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily block everything in ingress. All right, so another question I had, and this was from someone on Twitter, is in the current era of high number of cyber attacks and code-based exploitation, how do you maintain security and other governance of codes on GitHub? Well, there's so many ways to do so. The official GitHub way is to use GitHub Advanced Security, and it's a way I really like. I know it's not free, but it's the way to do it, because you have so many tools in there: code scanning, CodeQL, Dependabot. You have secret scanning, and all of those cover all the all the needs for security. Or in general, what I would suggest is have your code scanned, have your code tested, use different tools like if you don't want to have advanced security, or if you're already using other tools, you can use Sonar Cloud or White Source or White Hat or Sneak, as long as you have some sort of control of what you have and automatically perform scanning. And also code review. Code review is extremely important, is in so many ways, including security. So that's the way I would make sure my code is secure, because that's what you would do. Following up on the question before, he said that Azure DevOps is shared with more companies. That's right, but that's right. But in theory, you don't have access to the other people's projects, first, and second, of course, you should have some sort of authentication, right? So even though it is shared, it's a SaaS environment, it's a multi-tenant environment. That's the word I was looking for. But then there is the authentication between your GitHub Enterprise server and your Azure DevOps service that ensures that only the authenticated traffic can go through, right? It's not that everyone in Azure DevOps will be able to trigger anything on your GitHub Enterprise server. That doesn't work that way. Yeah, luckily. Also, I'll just say, I would like to know more about Azure DevOps projects compliance in terms of policies to enforce quality in DevOps practices at org level. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, but I do have a video that I published a couple of weeks ago, I believe, that talks about how to secure Azure DevOps organizations. And in there, you also have policies for to ensure compliance. If you talk about enforcing quality in DevOps practices, yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but for example, you can enforce the presence of some tasks in your CI/CD, for example, with pipelines. You can use the pipelines decorators that I also have a video about on the channel, and that will inject specific tasks, for example, for security or for other testing, etc., directly in all your pipelines. So you can't remove that. You can have policies to enforce some practices, again, around pipelines and so on and so forth. There's many things you can do in there, and if you have more specific thing you want to see, let me know. If I can't reply today, I will try and see if I can make a video about that. Oh, thank you very much, Thomas, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Arvin, if you were a hiring manager, which DevOps topic you will most likely ask or discuss with candidate? So that's an interesting question, because I happen to do a lot of interviews for my team, for partners I manage, for other teams. So I'm not saying that these are the questions I ask during my interviews. That would not be fair to the other people I will interview. But first of all, I will try to understand their understanding of DevOps, what they think DevOps is, and what they think a DevOps engineer or a DevOps candidate of some sort should do as part of their duties. One thing I focus a lot during my interviews is the culture and the process part, because I truly believe that the technical part it's important, but it's not super important in the sense that you can easily pick it up. The mindset you need to have for being a proficient DevOps person is different. So I normally focus more on that, and of course, then when we talk about the technical part, I ask the usual questions about. I give some scenarios, and I see how they reply to those scenarios. Like, if a company is doing this and that, what would you do? Like, I normally ask about IAC is something I'm passionate about. I normally ask about security. I normally ask about CI/CD for microservices. Those are the things I usually ask most of the time. Thomas, thanks again. Again, thanks to you for asking and for being here, and thanks again for the super chat. Another question from the audience saying multi-stage YAML pipelines versus release pipelines. Is there a reason to use release versus everything as a code? I run into some weird issues with the release ones. There are few reasons why you may want to use release pipelines, the classic release pipelines versus the multi-stage YAML ones. I would be interested in knowing what issues you encountered, but the reasons for using the classic ones could be some triggers. For example, if you want to easily trigger a release pipeline and consuming GitHub release, for example, then classic, it's straight away. And I use that a lot. Another reason is if you need post-deployment approvals. With the YAML pipelines, you can do only pre-deployment approvals. You cannot do post-deployment approvals. With the classic pipelines, you can do. And also there are some gates that can be applied in release pipelines that cannot be applied in multi-stage YAML pipeline. But if you don't need those things I mentioned, I would go with YAML pipelines. Also because they have many more benefits, including the fact that being YAML, they are in the repo, and therefore they can go for the same practices we do with code, meaning code review, pull request, scanning, linting, and so on and so forth. DevOps as a role or DevOps as a culture mindset. I think I mentioned that before, but I think DevOps as a role doesn't make a lot of sense to me. DevOps is something that should be applied to the whole development team, the whole software engineering department, if you will. So definitely DevOps as a culture, as a mindset, as a set of processes, and of course tools to help that. But that would be what I focus on, and this is actually what I focus on when I do consultancy for our clients. It's what I always try to do. Always try to make them collaborate across teams and expand the perception and the culture they have about DevOps. Do you think by just having CI/CD set up is considered DevOps environment? No. CI/CD is just one thing you should do, but yeah, no, it's not a DevOps environment. DevOps environments should focus on many other things. Again, including processes and culture. All right, it's been almost an hour. I have few more questions I want to answer very quickly. And again, if you guys have anything in mind, just let me know. I only have 3 more questions that I marked down. The first one is, can GitHub repos be hosted in a specific region like Australia or anything else? Currently, no. I mean, unless you use GitHub Enterprise Server. If you use GitHub Enterprise Server, you obviously can, because you can install it everywhere. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by Nathan in chat, which I'm not sure what he's talking about. But so can GitHub hosted in GitHub be hosted on specific region? The answer is no. Currently, if you use GitHub service, you can host your repos only in US. However, there's something coming up. It's called GitHub AGES, AE. You can check the documentation on the GitHub public website. No, I'm not sure when that's coming, but it's coming, and that will be basically somewhere between GitHub Enterprise Server and GitHub Enterprise Cloud, because will be fully managed GitHub instance in the cloud in any region, in any Azure region you want. So that will be coming. Of course, we talk about GitHub Enterprise, and I believe there will be a price markup for that. Don't quote me on this. I don't have any detail, but yeah, that will be the way. I know that GitHub announced before that they have plans to expand in multiple regions, but I don't have any information about that. Asanze, congrats for the 2,000 subscriber. Love from Malaysia. Thank you very much. And as I said before, that's only thanks to all of you guys following me. And I've been in Malaysia twice. One in KL, of course, and one in Kota Kinabalu. Not sure if anyone is interested in that, but I was there. Anything you expect from Build? I actually haven't followed anything about Build this year yet. I've been too busy for following that, so I'm not sure what to expect. I think there will be for sure some innovation announced for around GitHub for sure. I expect something about Visual Studio, probably something around Azure DevOps, but I wouldn't be too surprised if there's no announcement around Azure DevOps. But yeah, I guess we will see something for GitHub. What I would really love to see is the GA of GitHub Code Spaces. I love Code Spaces. I really want to have that GA, but I don't know if they will announce it or not. I haven't seen anything. Let's see. And actually, the keynote for Build 2021 is just in about, I guess, 1.5 hours, 2 hours. So just after this stream, we can all watch that. Raju say, is there a schedule of these live streams? So I usually have a live stream the first Tuesday of the month. So that will be next Tuesday. And indeed, I will have a live stream. I normally have, again, the first Tuesday of the month. Instead of publishing a normal video, I do the live stream. Today, I've decided to do it because it was the first Tuesday after crossing the 2,000 subscribers. So like kind of a celebration live stream. I decided to do it like this. But I usually publish the live stream like a week in advance, or so, 5 days in advance. So you can see that on the channel. And if you follow me on either Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn, I also post it there. So feel free to follow me of any of those platforms to be notified whenever I have a new live stream. And also, I mentioned before in the announcement session at the beginning of the streaming, I just published the CoderDave website, CoderDave.io, and in there you can subscribe to my newsletter. So whenever I will be live, I will also send out an email to the newsletter subscribers so they know that I'll be live. Nice, congrats. So we'll see you next time too. I hope so. I hope to see you, and thanks for being here. Hassan, I somehow feel like the DevOps teams and GitHub will merge, or they keep improving each other product. I feel GitHub Action UI is similar like Azure DevOps. Well, you know, GitHub has been acquired by Microsoft, right? And if you look at the org structure, both the Azure DevOps engineering and the GitHub engineering, or GitHub in general, they all report eventually to Nat Friedman. Nat Friedman is the CEO of GitHub and is the general manager for the developer services in Microsoft. And developer services in Microsoft comprises also the Azure DevOps engineering. So yeah, I guess that explains a lot of things. And I don't think the products will merge. There's no plan to do so. There's no roadmap for that. The two products will remain separate. The teams are working together already for a while, so that's the reality of the things. Yeah, I know. I don't have HTTPS. I published the website literally 15 minutes before going live, and I didn't have time to set up HTTPS. I'll do it tomorrow morning first thing. So I have a project on GitHub. I didn't talk about it on the channel, but if you go to my GitHub, I have a project called Azure Web App SSL Manager, which allows you to install free SSL certificates from Let's Encrypt on any app service or Azure function you have for free. So I'll be using that. I just didn't have time to do that, unfortunately. Have you ever thought about disaster recovery for Azure DevOps services? Meaning if the region of Azure DevOps goes down, we are doomed. Yes and no. And what I mean by that is that Azure DevOps, all the Azure services in general are replicated to another region, right? So there are disaster recovery capabilities built in Azure. Now, the thing is that so far, a single region has never gone down, or at least we haven't noticed. The problem is that few times the central US Central 2 or US East region went down. And that's the region where initially all the central services for Azure DevOps were hosted. Now they've replicated that in other regions, but that was the problem. So there was no DR for that. And I think there's no way to do DR for Azure DevOps services, not in the traditional sense of DR. You could do some sort of backup. You could replicate your Git repos here and there. I don't know. I wouldn't do that. I've never done that, and I've never advised anyone, any of my clients to do so. But I guess if you have critical services on there that you cannot work without, I would probably think of something. Nevin said it was a V before, not good enough to be FTE. I don't believe that. I'm sure it's not that. Normally, sometimes they only go for different contracts. There's many things that go in there. For sure, it's not that you were not good enough. Let me see if I can somehow block this person. All right. Sorry, there was someone spamming on the chat. All right, last question I have from the questions I had prepared. And I think I partially answered that already. And the question was, is Azure DevOps going to be deprecated anytime soon? And the answer is, to the best of my knowledge, no way. There are a few reasons why I say that. First of all, there are still thousands and thousands of clients using Azure DevOps. So that is not going anyway. Second, Azure DevOps is still widely used within Microsoft. A lot of teams are migrating or have migrated to GitHub, but some other teams are still using Azure DevOps, and some of those are also fairly big teams. So internally, they still need to be supported. And last but not least, if you look at the term and the TNC, the terms and conditions, of Azure DevOps, it says that Microsoft should give a 5 years notice in case of deprecation. And even if I wouldn't know anything else, I know that Microsoft hasn't sent any deprecation notice to anyone. So we are at least 5 years ahead, or 5 years away from the deprecation, which in my opinion will not happen anyway. If you were setting up DevOps today or migrating, would you choose DevOps or GitHub? I would choose GitHub unless there is a very specific reason why I couldn't use it. And the reason why I would choose GitHub is because Microsoft's strategic investment is going towards GitHub. Most of the innovation is going into GitHub. There is still development in Azure DevOps. So Azure DevOps is not, sleeping. There is still development going on there, but the most of the effort, the most of the money, the most of the development is going into GitHub. And GitHub is now a fairly mature platform. So again, unless there is something that is really missing for you in what you do, I would choose GitHub. There are a few reasons why you may want to go with Azure DevOps still. And those are, for example, if you need to support different platforms than Git. For example, if for any reason you want to stick with TFVC, or you have some SVN projects that you want to keep there, I couldn't think of a reason why you would, but if you want to do that, and then you want to build, CI/CD on top of that, you can do that with Azure Pipelines. You can do with GitHub Actions because it supports only Git and only GitHub. Or if you want to use the cloud, but you need data residency. As I mentioned, GitHub is only in US right now. It's coming in other regions, but with GitHub AE, if you need to have your repos or your services hosted in another region, then you will need to go with Azure DevOps, at least for the time being, unless you want to use an on-prem solution like GitHub Enterprise Server. Too many questions, we'll have to ask next time. No, no worries. I'm here to answer all your questions if I can. For me, my enterprise customer is coming from TFS era, and they like to use Azure DevOps Server. Well, fair enough. We still have a lot of clients that are still on TFS, or they like the interface, they are used to that. What I normally tell them is that as long as you do this choice is an informed decision, I'm good with that. But you need to consider that the strategic direction from Microsoft is GitHub. The strategic investment is in GitHub. And all the new features are coming first to GitHub. GitHub has the advanced security story behind it, which is not in Azure DevOps. And I don't think we will see anything first party in Azure DevOps regarding security. And so there are advantages of using GitHub, but again, if they are comfortable with that, as long as they make the decision knowing what they're doing, I'm good with that. Usually, if they're not .NET shop, they will use GitHub and GitLab. Yes and no. In my experience, even .NET shops or traditional Microsoft shops are starting more and more using GitHub. So it's not anymore a language choice. Is more a platform perspective. Let me drink some water. We are a mix of Node and .NET, moving infrastructure to Azure as far as servers go. Kind figured it will integrate better with DevOps, things like Azure AD, syncing with on-prem AD and all that. You mean Azure DevOps? Well, GitHub has the integration with Azure AD. And if you sync your Azure AD with your on-prem AD, that works as well. And actually, there is the support for something called SCIM in GitHub, which means that if you hook it up to your Azure AD, you can automatically provision your users in GitHub without a double step, which is more or less the same you would do in Azure DevOps. So, and also for the deployment integration, the integration between Azure and GitHub, it's pretty good. It's slightly different from perspective. The one big thing I miss in GitHub is the service principles that we have. Sorry, not the service principle. The service connections that we have in Azure DevOps. They don't exist in GitHub, so you need to go through saving your credentials in the GitHub secrets and do the authentication that way. But for the rest, it's pretty well integrated. On GitHub Actions, are you able to have self-hosted agents like in Azure DevOps? Yes, of course. Yeah, and I think I mentioned this before. In GitHub Actions, we don't call it agents. We call it runners, but it's basically the same things. So you can install your self-hosted runners in your infrastructure. The only thing that is different is that currently, officially at least, the self-hosted runners for GitHub Actions don't support running on containers. And the reason for this is that because there are two types of actions. There are the Node.js actions and the containerized actions, meaning that the task run in its own container. And there is a problem with the architecture that I was developed to run Docker in Docker for actions. There are workarounds for that. You can find them online, but they are not officially endorsed by GitHub nor supported. So at the moment, you can run the runners on bare metal, VMs, cloud providers, but not in containers. I know that something is coming soon. There's an issue on GitHub that has been open for quite a while, and I know the team is working on that, so I expect something to come out soon, but that's the status at the moment. I'm starting losing my voice, so I think I will close it soon. Service connection FTW, yeah, of course. As I mentioned, is the one thing I miss the most in GitHub. I hope the team will do something around that, but for the time being, and I guess this comes from how GitHub works. GitHub is meant to be a platform for everyone. So if they do service connections for Azure, then they would need to do something similar for AWS and for GCP and so on and so forth, which I guess it's a lot of work to put together, and a lot of agreements. But yeah, I hope the team will come up with something for that. All right, guys. I think I covered it all. We have one more question. Oh, two more questions. So Azure Key Vault and variable groups is one of my favorite. Yeah, that's the other thing I miss, the integration with the variable groups. For Azure Key Vault, you can still use Key Vault in GitHub Actions. We have an action pulling it for pulling the secrets out of Azure Key Vault and consuming that in GitHub Actions, but they work as environment variables. So the secrets are injected as environment variables, not as variable groups, because that doesn't exist in GitHub. But I agree, that's another thing that is pretty cool in Azure DevOps and is not present in GitHub. Is JS action toolset on its own worth it write action with instead of containers? I guess it depends what you're trying to do, right? So if you're trying to do an action that connects to an API, I would go with the Node.js one. Or if you do something along those lines. But if you're trying to do something more complex, that perhaps require you to have more dependencies or integrate with other tools that maybe are written in other languages, then I would use the containerized ones, because it's the right way to do it, right? So let me give you an example. I used recently an action that encapsulate the ARM TTK, which is the ARM template toolkit, I believe is the acronym, and it performs a lot of validations around ARM templates. So that tool is written in PowerShell. So to encapsulate that, they had to do a container. And because when you do an action in container, when you create an action using container, then you can do whatever you want. You can use all the technologies you want. You can do all the frameworks, languages, tools you want, anything you can use for achieving your goal. That's the reason why they are much more powerful. And that's the reason why they are exploding, in the sense that a lot of people are using those. But if you try to do something more, something simpler, then it's much easier to do it with Node.js. Thanks Aldo. See you next time. Sorry for the grammar. No worries. I think I understood what you were saying. All right. I think we'll close here. It's almost 11 p.m. here where I am. So I'm fairly tired. Once again, remember to check out the website, CoderDave.io, and subscribe to the newsletter if you want to be always up to date with what I do, with the next live streaming, with the next videos, polls, and whatever. And if you want to support the channel and if you want my eternal gratitude, you can do that on Patreon, and that will also give you access to exclusive content that I post only there. We have the Buy Me a Coffee platform. We have the YouTube memberships, the Super Chat, and so on and so forth. You have all the links in the video description. And again, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Thanks again for subscribing. When I started this journey, I wouldn't have thought that I would be here celebrating my 2,000 subscribers. And actually, we are already more than 2,000. We're 2,040 or almost 50. So yeah, thank you very much to every one of you. And I wish you a good day, night, or depends where you are. Take a look at the build keynote after this streaming. And yeah, hit the like button below if you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next time here at CoderDave. Bye.